Hey, what's up? I'm Greg from Atypical Engineer, and today we are going to talk about the first 5 files that you need to know when you start working on a Create React app project. Now, I was inspired to make this video because when I started making my first React project, you basically clone the project and you get the starter files, but I couldn't find much information about how everything ties together. And eventually, after I learned React and put everything together, I went back and those files became pretty common knowledge, but I realized that knowing what each thing does before I even started would have been really valuable. So that's what this video is for. If you've built a React application before, then this might not be the right video for you, but if you're just getting started with Create React App and you just want to know a quick layout and what's important when you get kicked off, then let's go. There's 5 files that I'm going to introduce you to in this video. The first one is called index.html. The second one is called index.js, your first JavaScript file in this project. The next one will be app.js, which is your main JavaScript file in this project. Then you'll be looking at app.css, which is a style sheet. And finally, you'll be looking at package.json, which is a file that helps you to manage your dependencies. Let's take a look at index.html first. So here we have the readme.md file of a basically blank Create React app application. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up the index.html file. It's in the public directory. Now, when you open it here, you can see that it's actually pretty empty. You just have some HTML tags, but it's a small file. And it is going to be the only HTML file that you will have in your React project. Now, when you get to more advanced projects, you might start to add some different things to this file. You can see that the head tag of your HTML is here. So you might be adding some style sheets or some fetching from some CDN, different things like that. But for now, we're just going to say that there's 2 things of interest. The first one is the title tag. So the title tag basically defines what gets shown in the browser tab when you have a bunch of tabs open and you kind of see the little writing that's on each tab. And we can go ahead and change this for our application just to make the point. So we'll go ahead and run npm start to get the local node environment up and running. If you don't know how to do that, I have very detailed walkthroughs of how to set all this up on other videos in my channel. And now that we have the browser running with our Create React app, we will just go ahead and change the text inside the title. So we'll just call it React Pokedex and we'll save. And you can see that the new text is up on the tab in the browser. So this is where you update that. Now, the other thing that you really want to care about here is this one div that has an ID of root. And this is the entry point basically for your entire React application. We're going to see in the next steps that we're going to use this div, and you don't really have to do anything with it here, but it's just cool to know where it is and just to have a mental map of what's actually going on. So that's it for the index.html. Let's go ahead and move on to the index JavaScript file, index.js. The index.js file is actually in a different folder. It's in the source folder. That means we'll look at the code navigation on the left side and we'll find the source directory and we'll click it and then we will open up the file called index.js. Okay, so cool. This is a pretty small file too, so it's not too bad. And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to clean some stuff up. Now, I don't recommend removing this stuff, especially strict mode, if you're building a real React application. But this instructional video and the videos surrounding it on this playlist are purely instructional for learning React. For those purposes, I want to try to have as few lines of code as possible, and that's why I'm removing these. Again, not recommending removing these for a real project, but here it's instructional to remove as much complexity as we possibly can. So we're going to remove the service worker. We're going to remove the strict mode tabs. And we're going to remove the service worker import. And then we are just going to start with what is the bare bones index.js file. Let's talk about the different lines on this file. So if you look at the top lines here, number 1, import React from React, you're going to have to use this in all of your React files. This is related to what Babel turns your React code into, because it turns it into React.create element blocks. But I think it's enough to just know that you need to import that. Number 2, import React DOM from React DOM. That's where you're getting this line on number 6, React DOM.render. Import./index.css. So this is a style sheets file. You're importing app from ./app. So that's you're importing a component from app.js. So when we get to line 6, we have something called React DOM.render. And that function has 2 arguments. It has just the app, and it has document.getElementById with root as its primary argument. What this is basically doing is it's rendering your element, the first argument, into something we call the container, which is the second argument. That second argument is a call to document.getElementById with an ID of root. And if you remember in our index.html file, we had a div ID of root. So that's what it's doing. It's finding that div, and then it's inserting the element app into that div. There's nothing special about the app component that's getting inserted into this container. So just to prove the point, we're going to modify line 7 by just putting an HTML header tag in place of the app component. And then we'll save and see what happens. And on the right side, you can see that hello world comes up just in a h1 tag. So this is kind of what we would expect if we knew that the React DOM.render was just putting whatever we had in the first argument into the element by ID, whose element has an ID of root. So let's go ahead and look at the actual source code. So we can right-click on the browser and open up the developer tools, and then we can click on the inspector, and we can see that we have something called div ID root. Okay, so this should match your HTML file. And then when you look inside the div ID root, you actually see your header 1 hello world code. React has put the first argument of this render function as a child of the div with ID of root. All right, that's definitely cool. So what actually happens when we put app back in? Well, you probably are thinking to yourself, it's just going to show whatever code that app is rendering, and you're right. So let's go ahead and delete the hello world, and then we'll uncomment the app line. And now this is back to where we originally had started. And we save, and we see that our hello world, my name is Gregory, comes back up in the browser screen. But more importantly, when we look down into the children of the div with ID root, we actually see all this new code. And this is what the app component is rendering. So you can kind of browse through here and see what's built, but that's not really part of the index.js. What you really need to know is that generally when you're doing a React project, you have this index.js file, and you use one top-level component called app. Or you can call it whatever you want, but there's just one top-level component, and it puts that into the render function. And so still, we're not even at the part where you're going to be changing much at all. That comes when we look at the next file, which is app.js. App.js is also found in the source directory, just like index.js. And as you might expect from the import statement in index.js, it houses the app component. So let's take a look at app.js. When we click on the file, we are greeted with one JavaScript function called app. And you can see at the bottom, there's an export default app. And in the index.js, we're importing app. So this is how we are communicating this function app over to index.js. We just have this export default statement, and the index.js imports it. Now, if we go line by line through app.js, we have the React import at the top. Okay, we have the logo import, which is just this little spinning image on the side here. We are importing a style sheet, which we'll talk about in a second. And then we have a JavaScript function. And this JavaScript function is returning a bunch of HTML markup. Okay, and then down at the bottom, we have the export default app. So our index.js is importing the app, and we're exporting the app here in this file. So this is what's allowing us to use this JavaScript function called app in the index.js file. Now, just to prove that this is actually what's happening, we're just going to go ahead and change the HTML tag around the hello world. My name is Gregory, and we're just going to change it to an H1. Okay, and if you do that, you can see automatically that the browser refreshes. Okay, so we are correctly pulling the return value of the app function and putting it into the root ID in our HTML file. And you can confirm this because you can still be inspecting the code and you see that inside the div ID root, we actually have an H1 that's hello world, my name is Gregory now. Okay, so this is kind of the chain. You're changing the return of your app function. The app function return value is a component in index.js, and that's getting inserted into the root element. And this is kind of the general flow of the whole React app. So before you even start writing code, you just really need to know that the rest of these things exist. Most of your work is going to happen in app.js and other files that are included through app.js. There are only two more files that I want to briefly mention. The first one is app.css. Now, if you look in the source directory, you'll actually see that there are a couple CSS files, but we're only going to care about app.css right now. It's probably important just to take a quick look at index.css because you need to know what type of styles are getting assigned there, but the primary style sheet work doesn't go in index.css. When you open app.css, though, you actually see that there are some styles applied already, and this is the default out-of-the-box styles for Create React App. As we've been doing through the rest of this video, I want to create a change and use that to demonstrate what's actually going on. If you remember in app.js, we were importing app.css. So if I wanted to demonstrate a change in app.css, then I'm going to go into the app.js file, and I'm just going to look for an element with a class name. Here I can see that this header element has a class name of app-header. So let's pick on that for a second. I'm going to go back to the app.css file, and I'm going to find the app-header class, and I'm just going to change the background color here to red. And again, I just want to demonstrate that I can change the styles of our application by changing app.css. When I change this to red and I click save, oh wow. Yeah, see, you can see it. It's very obvious. It doesn't look great, but you can at least see the change. So let's change this color back before my eyes burn out, and we'll just change it back to the color that it was before, and we'll leave it there. So that just briefly covers app.js. The last file that I want to talk about is called package.json. So if you open this file called package.json, which is in the root of your project's directory structure, you'll see that it just has a JSON structure that just lists kind of a bunch of configuration settings and things like that. The important thing to know here is that this dependencies field, you're not going to be modifying this directly, at least as a beginner. However, when you start to add some more dependencies will start to show up in this dependency field. So if you ever need to go and look at what version of a certain dependency you're using, or you want to find out if you're using a certain dependency, you can come here and look at that field. There's a whole bunch of other fields in here that I'm not going to get into right now, but this is a configuration file for NPM, which is your package manager, and it's just important to know where this is. So those are the 5 files that you really need to know before getting started with Create React App. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments because I do my best to answer every single one. Thank you for watching, and continue with this series if you're enjoying it. Have a good day.